Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus journeyed to a city called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd accompanied him. As he drew near to the gate of the city, a man who had died was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. A large crowd gathered from the city was with her, and when the Lord saw her, he was moved with pity for her and said to her, "Do not weep." He stepped forward and touched the coffin. At this the bearers halted, and he said, "Young man, I tell you, arise." And the dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized them all, and they glorified God, exclaiming, "A great prophet has arisen in our midst, and God has visited his people." The report about him spread throughout the whole of Judea and in all the surrounding regions. The Gospel of the Lord.
The incident of this Gospel passage of raising this young man from the dead happens not very far from where Elijah, the prophet, did something similar, where he raised the dead of a woman's son. And so they see immediately Jesus is at least a great prophet like Elijah. But beyond that, I was looking at how Jesus is so human here. He's moved with pity for this woman. But it's not an emotion that's alien to him concerning death. You see him react also in a deeply emotional way around the death of Lazarus, his dear friend. And if you look at that account of Lazarus, it says you could see this contempt for death, like, I'm not impressed with this. And at the same time, this great tenderness of weeping. And I was thinking how Jesus must have looked at this woman and saw what was coming in his own life. A widow who is left destitute with one son who has now died. That describes Mary. And I was, as I was reading this, I was feeling how Mary must have felt about this passage and how Jesus was looking at that woman and thinking, I really hurt for this guy because this is going to happen in my life. You see the beauty of Jesus's emotion. And you can see that Jesus has a heart for those who mourn. Blessed are those who mourn. He has a heart for people who experience death near them. He has a heart for survivors. But he also has a contempt for death. It's a contempt that drives him to Calvary so that he can be the vindicator over death. He hates it so much, but he loves his people. He says to this young man, I tell you, arise. And how he desires to say those words over us. Not that we would hasten our call to hear those words, but how he longs to give us the security of being in relationship with him so that he can peer into the tomb when we have died and say, I tell you, arise. What a great sign of hope to cling to. What a great sign of love from a Savior who is well acquainted with death and wants to free us from that and liberate us to arise with him in glory. How he longs to say those words to us when it is our time.
Regina Celi, letare